What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful Friday. I think this will be maybe my last video of the day unless there's some breaking news, but of course we'll be working Saturday because that's what I do. And if you're new here, please do click the red subscribe button down below. I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Now, often I cover various Joe Rogan news-related things on this channel, whether it's people being upset about what he's doing or saying, or reactions to myself to things that he said. And he made some interesting comments about Silicon Valley employees and calling them calling them mentally ill. That has everyone up in arms. And I actually thought when we looked at this particular Rogan news, we would use this tool. So these people have some ads coming up on my channel. So technically, it's sponsored, but Ground.news is this website where you can look at particular articles and check for media bias. It's actually really, really cool. So I just pulled up Joe Rogan News, for example. It says stay current with what's going on. There's 1,115 stories published in the last 3 months. Who covers Joe Rogan the most? The Blaze, The Daily Wire, Fox News, The Independent, and Freedom Rock Radio. Top stories we can look. Here's the article I'm just about to read. And you can see the way the headlines are. Joe Rogan slams big tech companies' employees as mentally ill. Here's who's covering it. This is actually really cool. You could check the media for bias and see, you can see the bias distribution. The only people covering this are right-leaning, 100% right-leaning. And we're going to get into the obviously article, but it's a cool tool that I hope to be using more because it helps me, examine my own blind spot. If we look at blind spot, like here's the article of Steven Crowder. Steven Crowder dupes scholars at academic conference with fake fatness studies. 7 people wrote articles about it. 100% of them were on the right. Not a single person on the left covered it. Biden shares pizza with U.S. troops during his visit. 60% left-leaning, 40% center-leaning, and 0% on the right covered it. Probably because it was, a favorable Biden article. But anyway, it's a really cool website for that. So I pulled some articles from Ground News, and here's one of them. Joe Rogan slams woke big tech. I'll put the link in the description and pin comment too. Joe Rogan slams big tech employees as mentally ill. Rogan took aim at woke activist employees of large Silicon Valley tech firms. I wonder if he's talking about Spotify, calling them mentally ill and lunatics who are running the asylum to a certain extent. Rogan made the comments on his Spotify podcast during an interview Wednesday with Antonio Garcia Martinez, an engineer at Apple and Facebook who parted ways with the iPhone maker after employees complained of, quote, misogynistic writings in his book. During the segment, Rogan asked Martinez what it was like to work for a large tech firm. For someone from outside, we look at it and say, how are those effing places run, Rogan said. The stand-up comedian then said he had a conversation with, quote, a good friend who was in management at Google before leaving the firm at another large tech company. The way she described it to me was utter madness, Rogan said. The lunatics are running the asylum to a certain extent because there's a lot of people working inside the company now that legitimately are mentally ill and consider themselves activists, according to Rogan. He added that tech bosses at these companies had to placate the workers because there is a certain percentage of the population that works for the company, and they're the loudest, and oftentimes they don't get work done. Rogan said when these workers are confronted over not getting work done, they talk about their, quote, activism. He said, and they use that essentially as a shield, right, to not get fired. He said his friend was forced to reprimand tech workers by telling them, you are here for X amount of hours per day. This is your effing job. You're not an activist. Martinez told Rogan that the companies are partly to blame because workers are encouraged by Human Resources Department to, quote, bring their real self to work. He described big tech firms like Facebook as a kind of a cult since employees are brought to a campus lifestyle where they do their laundry for you and they feed you. Facebook was like a cult and I joined it. And I was a happy member of it, Martinez said. It was very powerful. Everyone sacrificed themselves for the sake of the empire and its emperor. Rogan has been a frequent critic of tech firms for censoring and deplatforming those with viewpoints deemed outside the mainstream. Spotify, which signed Rogan to a 9-figure licensing deal, was pressured to dump the controversial podcaster after Who Cares, a loser, Neil Young, got mad about it. What I think is interesting is, if you look at the way, the media will cover this, I'm sure that nobody from the left is covering this article. But when we look at who's covering it, like when left coverage gets it, Joe Rogan offers to train Elon to fight Vladimir Putin. Only people on the left cover that. Joe Rogan slams big tech companies, centrist. These are different, articles. Freddie Gibbs says he stopped Joe Rogan from getting hammered over his remark, getting pummeled over his remark. Only person covering it on the left. Let's take a look at this article. You can read it inside, obviously, Ground On News too, but or you can read it outside, whatever you want. Freddie Gibbs said he stopped Joe Rogan from getting pummeled over. The rapper said Rogan had better appreciate the fact that he had protected him when they both appeared on the N Tony podcast. Interesting. I don't know. Joe Rogan's no slouch. I don't know who this other guy is, but I know who Freddie Gibbs is, but Freddie Gibbs has blasted, that's not really what it was, Joe Rogan for his past use of the word, telling the podcaster that he had protected him from getting beaten up for the language he uses about black people. The 1985 rapper appeared alongside Rogan on this podcast on March 15th, where he discussed the controversy about all this stuff. The world's changing, Joe. That word, Joe joked on the show, prompting Rogan to respond, "It's been years. Let it go." The host of the Joe Rogan Experience has come under fire over. So anytime anybody on the left gets to cover the word controversy, I assume Newsweek is relatively left-leaning. It was years ago. That was days, Gibbs told Rogan, adding that he had prevented Rogan from getting pummeled for his widely condemned Planet of the Apes anecdote about visiting a movie theater in a black neighborhood in Philadelphia. In the story, which she also shared by Indy RE, I don't care, she's just a clout chaser. She's done some good things in her life, but anyway, Gibbs went on that Rogan had better appreciate the fact that he had protected him. Rogan thanked him, and the conversation moved on. The rapper also criticized the host when he appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience, saying that you can't say that stuff, Joe. Gibbs had added, however, that he didn't think the podcast was racist. I just thought he was saying some stuff he shouldn't have said. I think that Joe Rogan, I saw that exchange, that Joe Rogan agreed with that. Rogan has deleted the podcast episode that contained the Philadelphia anecdote and conceded that was an idiotic thing to say. I was just trying to be entertaining. I wasn't trying to be, racist. I agree. I believe that. I definitely believe that. But the Silicon Valley stuff is pretty hilarious to me. And if you see exactly what they say, they have to placate them, the former Fear Factor host asserted, because there's a certain percentage of population of the people. I think he's talking about Spotify here. I think Rogan just basically openly blasted Spotify. There's certainly part of it, right? He recalls work experiences working in the Bay Area tech firms and likens Silicon Valley staffers to the quintessential image of a room full of monkeys who carelessly clank away on a typewriter keys, indefinitely responded by saying the firms employing these people are partly to blame due to them encouraging staffers to do this type of thing. He described to Rogan how big tech firms such as Facebook are a cult where employees are brought into a campus lifestyle and do your laundry and feed you. It was very powerful. Did it change our own personal thinking? Did it change your own personal thinking while you were there in the cult? Rogan went on to ask. Oh yeah, Martinez said, saying that he was vaguely aware of the bubble that surrounded the tech company due to his education at tech-heavy University of California, Berkeley. The rest of the discussion revolved around Martinez's experiences in those companies involving targeted ads implemented on tech companies' respective platforms. He, of course, was fired by Apple after just 1 month on the job when his new coworkers unearthed controversial passages from a book from 10 years ago, 2016, written after he was fired from Facebook in 2013, which they branded unacceptable. Those colleagues flagged up these book claims that women are full of S and that excerpt likening a former Indian coworker to a bored auto rickshaw driver from Delhi. It quickly ruffled feathers from within the company, with 2,000 outraged Apple employees signing a petition demanding an investigation into a decision to fire him. Apple staffers took issue with the comments made in Chaos Monkeys, a former New York Times bestseller, which they deemed offensive. He also cruelly nicknamed a female co-worker PMMS, a derogatory term for a woman on her visit, and described a colleague with a thick Indian accent as an auto rickshaw. So what? I mean, like, do you think that his coworker really cared? Do you think that his coworker was, losing their mind, super upset about it? I don't think so. I am sure that the vast majority of people that work in Silicon Valley are actually good people. I really do believe that. And I think that just the lunatics are the ones that we see. They're the ones, running the asylum, which is exactly what Joe Rogan said. Will it get any better? Well, certainly not until there's some better alternatives out there. But until then, check out ground.news. They also have an app to figure out exactly what's going on. They also have a browser extension too, but figure out exactly what's going on. See if you have a blind spot. See who's covering what. And then figure out exactly why there's that split. And then find the things that are evenly covered and wonder maybe why that is. Because you have the New York mayor partially lifts the mandates for professional athletes. Certainly the left is happy about this. The right is probably pointing out how, there's if you're an athlete or famous, you don't have to live by the same rules as the poors. And center probably the similar opinion. Anyway, enough about that. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you Saturday.